communicator at the University of Ottawa. Dad, chef, comedian. Anything else I left out there, Ray?
Damn good looking.
Oh, yeah. I should have started with that.
Face for radio.
I forgot. And modest, too. So let's get serious here, because I see the theme here. After, even though we've talked about it, people are still saying, but if I'm double vaxxed, why aren't I protected? Dr. Ray?
Well, for the most part, you are protected, but not perfectly so. So with the new variants, the efficiency, the effectiveness, the efficacy, whatever word you want to use, of the vaccines drops a little bit, down to 88%, maybe even less, depending on which data you want to look at, which means that it isn't going to work perfectly on everybody. So that's true for all things. Not everything is perfect. And that is enacted when the disease is highly prevalent. You don't know if you've mounted an immune response. You don't know if you're immune until you're exposed to the virus. So the less we're exposed to it, the better. On top of that, these vaccines don't always prevent serious symptoms. So let's back up a second. They're reasonably good at preventing infection. They're better at preventing symptomatic infection. They're better still at preventing serious infection, and they're better still at preventing hospitalization and death. So the more serious the outcome, the better the vaccines do. But at the lower levels, they may not be that great at preventing actual infection, either symptomatic or asymptomatic. That means a vaccinated person can probably still pass it on to somebody else who isn't vaccinated. That's why the mixing of the two populations is a little problematic and sketchy at the moment. But breakthrough infections do occur. Breakthrough infections do occur, meaning, if you're vaccinated, you still get infected. But it's rare. It's quite rare. So some data out of Massachusetts suggests it happens less than 1% of the time. I think that's probably a bit too optimistic. It's probably a little more common than that. But it's not a bulletproof vest as a takeaway message.
Could it be worse than what we figure with the numbers you threw out there, given the transmissibility of the Delta variant? Yeah,
Delta does throw a bit of a wrench into the works, but it's not as bad as you might have heard. Transmissibility makes a difference, the virulence makes a difference, and the fact that vaccinated people who become infected seem to have the same viral load as unvaccinated people, so seem to be equally as likely to pass it on. The trick is not to be infected. Don't be exposed, right? So until we can reduce exposure for everybody, we got to maintain some mitigation tools.
Mandatory vaccinations, A, vaccine passports, B, none of which have really been discussed in recent days here in the province of Ontario. How do you feel about the way Ontario's dealing it versus what's happening in Quebec and even federally?
I think we're going to have some discussion about making it compulsory for some professions pretty soon. There are going to be some administrative roadblocks, union roadblocks, etc. Vaccine passports, I think that's coming. Like Israel showed us how, Denmark showed us how, New York is showing us how, and now Quebec is showing us how. It's probably the fastest, easiest, most effective way to maintain normal until we get to genuine herd immunity. And it's not unethical, depending on how you want to roll it out.
But it is political, and that seems to be spilling it over here on the hesitancy of rolling it out here.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the compulsory aspects of it. I don't think it should be compulsory for people in general because we have some degree of bodily integrity and autonomy. But for professions, healthcare workers, first responders, teachers, there is no constitutional right to a certain profession. My mantra is, if you don't want the jab, find another job. But there is a constitutional right, probably, I'm not a lawyer, but probably for your bodily integrity in general. With vaccine passports, no one is saying you can't access something. We're just saying if you're not vaccinated, you got to take a couple of extra steps, like providing proof of non-infection via test, like maybe wearing a mask, And if you're in a job that is asking you to do these things, maybe that test is not free. So it may cost you some money. So what we're doing is just creating disincentives to avoid vaccination and more incentives to get vaccination, while at the same time not denying service.
There's another theme that's coming up on our board about those with autoimmune diseases and that they can't be vaccinated. Is that true in all cases?
It's very rare, vanishingly rare. The number of people with medical exemptions against vaccination are those people, frankly, who are allergic to some of the components of the vaccine. I would estimate probably fewer than 100 people in the province. I pulled that number out of thin air. I don't know for sure, but it's really rare. Yeah, in fact, the immunocompromised do very well with mRNA vaccines because mRNA vaccines don't contain live virus. So in fact, it's actually better for them in many cases. So I don't think that's a reasonable argument to make to be against vaccine passports. But they are a real population, a small number of people, but they're real, and they need to be accommodated and taken care of.
Could it be that some of their doctors are saying, look, it's up to you to take, to take the risk. You're not the same as your spouse would be, who's not doesn't suffer from an autoimmune disease, and maybe somehow in translation it isn't playing out accordingly?
I think there are some communication issues here. There are also some understanding issues, even on the part of healthcare workers in getting the word across. There's a lot of miscommunication and poor understanding of the science, even on my part sometimes. So we need to gather our forces and debrief and get the message, solidified and made constant. There's a lot of work to be done.
I've just got the numbers coming in. 10 here in Ottawa, so down from 11 yesterday. 340 across the province. It's creeping up provincially.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Not entirely unexpected as things opened up a bit. So we might be entering an endemic phase of this disease, which resembles a fourth wave, which is not great, but it doesn't mean we're going to close things down. I think the days of lockdown are behind us. But the way we reduce those numbers and keep them low is, again, have maximum vaccine uptake. We don't get to herd immunity unless we get 85, 90% of the population vaccinated at this point because of Delta. And we're at, 65, 70% with doubly vaccinated now? So we got a ways to go. We know what to do. We just have to do it.
Is it possible if we could have officially a fourth wave and the hospitals not be overwhelmed, given the vaccination rollout?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, what is a fourth wave? It just means the cases go up and stay up for a while, then come down again. That's probably what's going to happen, a fourth wave amongst the unvaccinated. But it might be a small wave. It might be endemic in that it goes up and stays up and percolates at a certain level and stays that way, and public health deals with it. But again, it's so much in our power to control this. Just get vaccinated if you're eligible. There's almost no downside to it.
One group that isn't eligible yet, under the age of 12, let me ask you, if you've had a chance to look at the provincial back-to-school plan, and it really hasn't changed much from phase one. That being said, is it adequate?
I don't think it's adequate, but it's a dramatic step forward, actually, because it acknowledges that airborne transmission is a reality, and it advocates for improvements in ventilation, which I think is fantastic. Now, if we had this guidance a few weeks ago or months ago, there'd be more time to make those improvements. And if there is money that goes along with them to make the appropriate HVAC and air purifier improvements, that'd be great too. We have a mask mandate, which is fantastic. I think that mask should include N95 respirators, not just cloth masks. What it's missing is a vaccine policy, right? So I think educators should be vaccinated, and I think there should be maybe some policy around those kids who aren't vaccinated, the over 12s that is, maybe restricting certain kinds of extracurricular activities and so forth. But for the under 12s, we have to really protect them because they cannot be vaccinated. We have to wrap all the public health assets around them.
The province purchased HEPA filter units, some 20,000, up to 50,000 now. Does one of those units in the class of 20 do the trick?
I don't know. That's an engineering question. I don't know. But what I'm concerned about is how loud are they? Right? So noise will be a disincentive to turn it on. What we don't want is people turning this thing off on a day-to-day basis. So all kinds of thinking has to go into this. There's a real-life aspect that must be considered, not just the effectiveness of the device itself.
Final question. How old is your little one now?
16 months? 15 months? Jeez. Yeah.
Almost like a pandemic. It's almost as long. Born in the middle of the pandemic, or at the beginning of the pandemic. What is the greatest lesson of fatherhood that you learned?
That my life is finite and it doesn't matter. Nothing that I care about or none of my health or desires matter anymore. It's all about him, which is a great thing to understand, actually.
How's your diaper changing going?
I love it, actually. It's the least stressful part of my day.
Yeah, it is. There is some sort of zen doing it, right? Thank you, Dr. Raywat. I always appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We all know Dr. Raywat Deonandan. There is some...
Doc, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you.